Okay, so hello guys. This week it's business, which means that it's going to be super disorganized. I'm going to be super disorganized in this video because business, next to the fact that I always rely on your immediate feedback, business is something that I am not really good about. So, yeah, I have prepared a handout for you based on the chapter and based on extra information that I've researched, and I'm going to upload this handout for you to the Moodle. And right now I will attempt to get through this handout and to reflect some of the stuff there and to add to some of the stuff. Okay, I'm trying not to, yeah, if I do that, even the sun is in my face. Okay, I'm not even sure why I'm doing that. Okay, so anyway, business. Americans love business because it's something that actually reflects well on their basic values. It's about competition, it's about individual freedom, it's about hard work, equality of opportunities. So business is great. You can see it even in the conversation starter video that I will have uploaded by the time you're watching this video about how even kids are going into business. So yeah, Americans love business, especially people who build their own businesses. And here is when this controversy, let's call it a controversy of entrepreneurs and CEOs come into factor. Americans love entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the people who build something out of nothing, who make companies, who create product, create companies and make their own wealth, who have these stories, these rags to riches stories. Entrepreneurs are basically heroes of America, the real examples of this, the American dream, the social mobility. And here comes, in the very beginning of this video, here comes this week's task for you, the one based on what I will see that you will watch this video. And this is that I want you to comment with any kind of narrative, so it can be movies, series, books, anything where you have a character or just a character uh, who shows this rags to riches mentality, where the narrative is about how they acquired their wealth, how they build their company. So yeah, that's the task. Give me narratives, give me characters who are this kind of entrepreneur American hero. Good luck, guys. Okay, so yeah, that's the entrepreneur. And then we have the CEO. The CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, who takes over leading the company. Americans do not like CEOs that much because many CEOs, on one hand, abuse their wealth, and of course, on the other hand, which is the more important thing here, is that CEOs did not build their company. They are just placed in the leading position after somebody else built the company, and this is why they are not really heroes. They are just people who handle money. They do not make money in that sense. So yeah, CEOs are not the heroes of the American narrative. What we have to know about the industry, the American industry, the business, is basically throughout the 20th century, America had a bunch of well-paying factory jobs that required no college degree, and this is why we still have the idea of the American dream. And by American dream, I mean the suburbs, white picket fence, and everything else that comes with it. Okay, I'm trying to get out of the direct sunlight. I'm sorry. So yeah, but it has changed because right now we are moving from production based industry to service based industry. Many factory jobs are outsourced and placed overseas because making stuff in Asia is much cheaper, basically. Uh, and that's why there are less and less well-paying factory jobs in the US. And this is why the American dream is dying right now. You cannot do that now what you could do in the 50s and in the 60s. This is also something that is a generational divide right now. Think about boomers and millennials. So yeah, that's about it. But next to this, so even though there are less well-paying factory jobs and the like, there is still this need of acquiring the American dream of getting rich. And so we have these get rich quick schemes and pyramid schemes. This is also something that John Oliver, I'm sorry guys if you don't like John Oliver, I know I'm using a lot of his videos right now because yeah, the guy can explain stuff much better than I can. So the pyramid schemes, which are basically, okay, join our company, sell our stuff, and organize more people, get more people join, and you're going to get going to get a percentage from the stuff that they are selling, not only what you are selling, but what others are selling. So yeah, you have the pyramid right there. And the point is that you cannot actually get rich from that. Only a very few people can sell and get new people to join enough to actually make a good living out of that, to make that your primary job. But these companies are still trying to get these people to join by selling them this idea that they can be self-reliant through hard work and they can get rich and they can achieve the American dream. They cannot, of course, especially because most of these pyramid schemes, I mean, the pyramid schemes, all of the pyramid schemes is about to be good for the people on the top and to be bad for the people lower down, basically. In very short, we should talk a little bit about the financial crisis of 2008. Once again, I'm not a business person, but what happened here basically is that starting around 2000, the American government tried to make it more accessible for lower income people to buy homes. And to help them, they created these subpar loans. So basically, loans that you could get even if you had lower incomes, if you had worse credit scores. And the downside, it was that they had bad terms. So basically, on the long run, you paid more, you paid bigger monthly installments, and many people defaulted on their loans. They couldn't couldn't repay their loans. And so this housing bubble just kept growing because more and more people were buying houses. House prices went up, but when it burst and people couldn't pay their loans, suddenly the houses were worth less. Even if you sold your house, you just couldn't get its worth back. And basically um, the whole industry collapsed. There was a financial crisis because of that. And the sad thing is that many 1% or so upper class people benefited from this because they bought up failing companies and on the long run, it resulted in a bigger gap between the middle class and the upper class. And it led to movements like the Occupy Wall Street movement, led to general disillusionment, especially in our generation, because I don't know about you guys, but I have a feeling that most of my generation will never own a house or a home, only if they have rich parents, and it's super depressing. But yeah. And also, so right now there is a loss of upward social mobility because of that, and also the American dream is changing. As the text said, American people are less and less concerned about acquiring personal wealth, and instead they are more focused on they are more focused on personal fulfillment, to be with friends, to be with family. They are working less and taking care of themselves more and more, chasing a sense of personal fulfillment. And also part, at least as per the chapter, also part of the changing American dream is creativity and innovation. This is also something that existed before, the whole entrepreneur idea. How we can innovate, how can we create new things, or just remember last week, the novelty idea. How can we make things better? And what is really interesting about the idea of innovation and creativity is crowdfunding nowadays. Think just a Kickstarter. For example, if you have an idea of a new product, but you have no budget to start it. So you basically make video about your idea of what you want to do. You put it on a crowdfunding website, and people who like your idea might actually give you money. And then you have a starting budget, and you can make your idea reality. For example, like sometimes I see stuff like comic book artists who want to create their own stories, but of course they have no money for publishing, so they create a crowdfunding site. They put some of their original art there and say that, okay, I have this idea, I want to make an actual hard copy comic book out of it, but I need money for publishing. And if you donate like more than $15, then once I have everything together and I can get it published, you're going to get a signed copy out of it. Or for example, when actors, this is also something that I've seen a couple of times, when actors want to make their own projects, they finance it through crowdfunding. Like, okay, I can't think of any actual example right now, but like you have actors and they have an idea and they want to direct it, and they put out a crowdfunding site, and either they get the money together or they don't, and then they either do it or they don't. But sometimes it actually works. And also, it's the sadder part of crowdfunding, and also something that we have to talk about here in connection with healthcare, is how more and more people are actually starting crowdfunding sites to fund their medical bills, because medical bills in the US are crazy. But before I go down that rabbit hole, first of all, we still have to talk about a couple of things. For example, the DIY movement, the do-it-yourself movement. Basically, how more and more people, this is also connected to self-reliance, through the combination of self-reliance and technology, go online and learn something how to do it by themselves instead of contracting a professional. And there are a bunch of videos on YouTube and other sites on how to do this, how to do that. For example, like guys, I learned how to crochet and to do amigurumi figurines last year, and I learned it from YouTube videos. You can actually learn that stuff through YouTube. And like I've read about a woman with 3 or 4 children who built a house all by herself by watching YouTube videos. So basically today, if you want to learn something, chances are you're going to find it online for free and you can learn it. It basically just limited by yourself. Also, something that we have to talk about is the so-called techno-philanthropists. These are guys who made their fortune through technology, so like Zuckerberg. And what sets them apart from regular philanthropists is that usually philanthropists start donating huge amounts of money to charities and to the public at the end of their lives. These guys, they are donating even before they hit 30. So it's actually a good thing that they make their wealth and they start redistributing it pretty early on. Also, something that the text mentions is the so-called benefit corporations, which is between for-profit and charity organizations, even blurring the lines between the two, where they want to provide some kind of environmental or social services and benefits, but they are still trying to make a profit, which is kind of dishonest. I think it's dishonest, if I want to be honest. So yeah. And also something that I forgot to mention is outsourcing. So it's not only that factory jobs are taken overseas, but that they are being outsourced to companies who might be overseas. So basically, this is when you have one task that you are not getting done by your own employees, by people you are actually employing, but you write up a contract and have somebody else from a different company do it for yourself because it's cheaper. I actually have an anecdote, a personal anecdote about outsourcing. Yeah, it was in Hungary, but it's still very illustrative of what's happening here and what's happening in the US. So to start with, I don't know if you guys do you know if you guys know, I'm sorry, if you guys know, but there is this the Great Marvel comic book collection, and they also have a DC version of hardcover comic collections coming out every 2 weeks, and you can subscribe for them. And I'm also a translator. I've translated novels mostly for Könyveképző. And when this whole Marvel collection started, I subscribed for it. I subscribed for 17 issues altogether. And I didn't even read all of them. And when I read some, I was like, okay, it's not completely right, the translation, but it's okay. Then came the issue 17, which was a She-Hulk story and something that I hadn't read before in English. And I started reading it and it just didn't make sense. There was something wrong about it and it didn't make sense. So I looked up the original text, the English text, and started comparing it to the Hungarian one. And it was bad. like when I compared the two texts, I realized how many mistranslations it had. I actually made a list of all the mistranslations, and in the first issue, so it was a collection of 5 or 6 issues, and the first issue, which is like 25 pages, I found over 30 mistranslations. And like comics don't have that much text to begin with. And there were so huge mistranslations that it actually distorted the story. You couldn't actually understand the story well in the Hungarian version, and I was super mad. And I actually had a Word document of all the mistranslations in the first issue, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the company who did this, and worst case scenario, they don't answer. Best case scenario, I'm getting a job offer. So I went first to the company from where I ordered the series. And their answer was that we are not the publisher, we are only distributing these comics. We have nothing to do with the content. Okay. So then I went to the publisher. I sent the same letter to the publisher, and they answered that, okay, we are only publishing this, but we are actually outsourcing the translation, so we have nothing to do with the translation. So then I went to the team, the company who translated the comic, and I got the answer that yes, we know it sucks, we know it's terrible, but we had 4 days to go from zero to be ready to print it. And it's not the first time it happened, and we are sure it's not the last time it's going to happen, and we can do nothing about it. So that was the moment that I canceled my subscription. So be careful about the comic collections this way. Yeah, so basically that's the business part. But before we finish, we have to talk about the health industry in the US, because this is also very important. I'm going to upload once again a John Oliver video just about a month ago. He did a segment on this whole Medicare for all stuff that's going on in the US right now. This is something that Democratic candidates right now are very passionate about. Basically, they want to realize a single payer healthcare system in the US, universal healthcare, basically what we have too in Hungary right now. It's a very good segment, so please watch it. I'm going to upload it to the Facebook group. So, okay, what we have to know about American healthcare and health insurance. First of all, it sucks. There is no nicer way to say it. American healthcare, at least as far as money goes, it sucks. Because it is an industry. It is for profit. But how do the health insurance stuff works? So you are either insured by your employer, and even in that case, you have to pay a monthly premium. Premium is the fee that you pay monthly. Or you are self-insured. And even if you are healthy, health insurance is super expensive. Like a huge amount, a huge portion of your monthly paycheck can go to health insurance. It's crazy how much health insurance Americans pay. And what happens if you actually have to use your health insurance, if anything happens to you? Basically, there are the so-called deductibles. This is a set amount of money that you have to pay out of pocket if you need any kind of healthcare, a certain amount that you have to pay before your health insurance kicks in. So for example, there is a limit that you have to spend $2,000 a year before your health insurance would pay anything for you. And even after the health insurance kicks in, there are co-pays, a set portion of your healthcare bills that you have to pay out of pocket. And the more premium you pay, so the more you pay every month, the smaller your deductible and the smaller of your copay is going to be. And still, many people doesn't have insurance. There are many uninsured people. That's why the Affordable Care Act, or so-called Obamacare, came into action a couple of years ago, which basically said that you have to be insured. Insurance companies cannot turn you away because of pre-existing conditions. So for example, if you have a heart defect that you were born with, health insurance companies could actually turn you away and say that they are not going to insure you, which sucks once again. It's also something that is aimed to make healthcare more affordable, hence the name, and it has worked. It helped many people to have health insurance today, but it's still not perfect. There are still problems with it. And so why healthcare is so expensive? Once again, it's basically because it's for profit, and because there are so many bureaucratic stuff going on there, administration and this for-profitness. Just a couple of examples. A bag of IV fluids, so saline, cost about $1 to make, and still when hospitals bill you for IV, they can bill you for several $100s. Once again, it costs $1 to make it, and they make you like $300 for it. There are bogus stuff that they make you pay. For example, I find this story where a woman had a C-section, and after the C-section, her baby was put on her chest for skin-to-skin contact, and the hospital actually billed her nearly $40 for putting her baby on her chest after birth. It actually happened. There was another scandal in 2015 when a guy called Martin Shkreli, I hope I'm saying his name right, although he's a scumbag, so I don't care if I mispronounce his name. Basically, there was medicine, a drug called Daraprim, which was used to treat malaria, HIV, toxoplasmosis, stuff like that. And this guy's company actually bought the rights for Daramin. There was no generic drug to use instead of Daramin. They bought the drug and then raised the prices from about $13 a pill to $750 per pill. And let's just imagine that you have HIV and you need to take this medicine because your life depends on it, and suddenly it goes up from $13 to over $700 a pill. Also, something that keeps coming up in medical dramas, for example, is the price of insulin. This is a topic, okay, medical dramas is like my guilty pleasure, and I watch a lot of them. And the problems with insulin, the price of insulin, actually have come up in The Resident, in New Amsterdam. I think it was in Grey's Anatomy as well. So basically what happens here is that people with diabetes, of course, need insulin. But the price of insulin is so high that they just cannot afford to buy it. So they try to stretch it. They give themselves smaller amounts, less frequently. They're basically playing with their health. They can go into hyperglycemic, I don't know if I pronounced it well, shocks. They can die because they cannot afford to buy the medicine that they need to live. And just a semi-personal anecdote, I have a friend who lives in the States. I think I mentioned him before. A year or two ago, he had two smaller healthcare events. First, he got stung by a bee and he had an allergic reaction. And then he had a throat what's the word? Sorry, guys. Infection, not inspection. I wanted to say inspection, but it's infection. He had a throat infection, and because of these two, he ended up in the ER. And because of these two visits, he got into $11,000 of debt for being stung by a bee and a sore throat, basically. So American healthcare is crazy. So many families are one accident away from bankruptcy. And people say that American healthcare is so great. Yeah, if you have money. We actually have some friends living in the US. The wife used to be my dad's colleague in the 80s. They've been living in the States for decades. The guy moved there as a child. And a couple of years ago, he had colon cancer. And he actually came back to Hungary to be treated here because it was better and it was cheaper. And it's not something that you hear about Hungarian healthcare, to be frank. And even my former American studies teacher, the guy I've mentioned before, who came from Maryland, his parents would come here every year and they would get their dental work done here in Hungary in private offices, because even though they had to pay for it, they had to pay less for dental service than in the US. They got better service for cheaper, even with the airline tickets. And this is something to think about, really, honestly. Also, there are programs to help people with health care costs. One, the Affordable Care Act I've already mentioned, and then we have Medicare and Medicaid. What's the difference? Medicare is for senior citizens, so citizens above 65, and people with disabilities. This is something that you have actually paid for during your life, and then when you reach 65, you get to use it up. So you still have to pay a small deductible, so a small amount of money from your pocket for drugs, for doctor's visits, but it's actually cheaper that way than to, once again, with health insurance and stuff. It's also a federal program, so it's the same everywhere in the United States. And then you have Medicaid, which is for people below and around the poverty line. So it's an aid. It's something that you don't actually pay for, not like Medicare. And it's something that is a state federal program, so it can vary between states. And basically, I think this is all I wanted to tell you about American business and healthcare. Once again, I'm going to be online at the time of the class, so Tuesday morning, and you can ask your questions then. And if you cannot wait until then, of course, you can ask them whenever you want on Facebook, or on Facebook mostly. So thank you guys. See you when I see you. Bye.